All right, so before we get to chapter 26, sorry? So you'll see in a minute. So before we get to chapter 26, which really starts a new section of Tanya from chapter 26 all the way to chapter 34 is a new subject in Tanya. And 26 through 34 talks about how to get rid of things that worry us and how to get joy. So before we get to chapter 26, which we'll do today, God willing, I want to recap the main points of everything we learned till now. Right? Because it's a new section, so just to recap everything. Not to go through every single chapter, but really to get to what's the bottom line of what we have been learning over the last 3 weeks, however long it's been, learning the first 25 chapters of Tanya. So I call this Tanya intro map. It's like a map to understand what the Tanya is teaching us and what the point is. So if you look at the middle bar, you see where it says the internal struggle, dash duality. You see it? So it's a struggle. Your brother's by the door if you want to open that. So there's a struggle between two parts within us, but not just a struggle, it's also a duality. Do you know what duality means? Duality. What I mean is that it's not just a struggle where one wins and the other one loses, but they actually end up both being involved in what happens in the end, right? In other words, there's two parts to me inside, and I have to work with both of them. Even though both of them are struggling with each other, I end up having to work with them both. So first, let's look at what the struggle is. So what's the godly soul? Look at the right side, nefesh elokit. The godly soul, if we were to define it, what is it? So it's the altruistic state. You know what altruistic means? Altruistic means it doesn't think about itself, it thinks about what's the truth. That's what altruistic means. So it's the altruistic state, right? The altruistic part of me, the part of me that just wants to do the right thing. And what does it want? What's it looking for? That pursues closeness to God, to Hashem, and the avoidance of distance. So I want to get closer to Hashem, and I'm afraid of disconnecting. That's kind of what we talked about yesterday and the day before. Because a Jew is afraid of disconnecting, that's why he's willing to die rather than bow down to an idol. And I could use that to motivate me from doing a sin, not doing a sin, because I know a sin is a disconnect from Hashem, right? So what's the neshama's experience? It's the desire to want to get close to Hashem and afraid of disconnecting, right? Now it has a mind and a heart that does that. What's the mind of the nefesh elokit, the godly soul? Perceives or understands the truth of Hashem, the divine reality. And because it understands the truth of Hashem, it decides that this is the most important thing to be dedicated to. It's worthy of one's devotion. Now, because it understands the truth of Hashem, what happens in the heart? It loves and is in awe of Hashem, and this love and fear drives it, pushes it to act according to the love and fear of Hashem. What would be the actions that are in accordance with the love and fear of Hashem? What are the actions that are resulting of love and fear of Hashem? Mitzvahs. Mitzvahs not doing sin? Okay. So that's the godly soul. It's one part of me. Right? That's what we talked about in chapter 2, all the way to chapter 5. From 2 to 5. Then we have on the other side the animal soul. The animal soul, we said, is the natural human state, just being a regular biological person, not bad, just a regular person. And what does a regular person want? Pursues pleasure, wants to enjoy life, and the avoidance of pain, and stays away from pain, right? So both the godly soul and the animal soul are driven to something and are afraid of something. The difference is what? The animal soul's driven to enjoy itself, and it's afraid of something painful to itself. The godly soul is driven to closeness to Hashem and afraid of disconnect from Hashem, right? And then it has, the godly soul has a mind and a heart to do that. A mind to understand Hashem, that's how it gets closer. And a heart to feel love for Hashem and feel awe for Hashem. That makes it dedicate himself to Hashem in action, right? Yes, we're going to learn about that in chapter 39 and 40. Okay, then the mind. What's the mind of the animal soul? If the animal soul is driven by just like a regular human being, it wants to enjoy itself and it wants to stay away from pain. Not a bad thing, it's just a normal thing, right? So what's the mind? It looks around the natural reality. It looks around, perceives the natural reality, understands the world around it, and decides, oh, look how beautiful this world is. This is worthy of my devotion. Because look how beautiful this world is. That's beautiful. That tastes good. That's fun. Right? It just looks around the world around it and says, wow, these are some fantastic things I can do. Right? So where's the mind of the godly soul says, wow, look at Hashem. This is what I want to attach myself to. The animal soul says, look at this world. It's beautiful. I want to be part of that. Following? And then, therefore, what does the heart do in the animal soul? Loves and is in awe of the world around it. It loves the world and it gets afraid of things in the world that can harm it. It says, oh, that's a lion. I got to run away. Ooh, that's a piece of steak. Let me go run and eat it. Following? In the same way, the godly soul says, wow, there's a mitzvah to attach myself to Hashem. Let me do it. Wow, there's an avera disconnecting from Hashem. I want to stay away. Right? Same thing, but on the other side. Right? You do it because you don't want to go to Gehenna. Same thing. It's also what? So we're going to learn about that in later chapters. It's still a mitzvah. The short answer is that it's still a mitzvah because a mitzvah is a mitzvah no matter how you do it. Right? It's still a mitzvah, but it's not the purest form of a mitzvah. And therefore, a person has to do a kind of teshuvah to fix that up. We're going to learn that in chapter 39 and 40. Okay, so the heart of the animal soul loves and is in awe of the world around it and drives one to act within it. It loves the world around it. It sees all the pleasure. It's in awe and impressed by things that are amazing in this world. It's scared of things that can hurt it in this world, and that's the way it behaves. So now at this point, is any of these things, well, we know for sure the godly soul is amazing because all it wants is to serve Hashem. But at this point, is the animal soul bad? If I just describe it this way, is it bad? It's just selfish. But what did we say is klipa? Remember what we said in chapter 6, what klipa is? Anything that says, me. Only way to be Kedusha, holiness, is if you're dedicated to Hashem, like an angel, dedicated to Hashem. But anything that says, I exist, that's klipa. So even if it's not evil to say, I am hungry, but it's klipa, because it's a selfish thing. I am hungry. So what becomes the struggle then? And this is the duality part. What's the duality part? They both work together. I have to eat. I'm a human being, so I have to have an animal soul that wants to eat. But what's the challenge? To eat in a way that's meant to help me serve Hashem. I eat with the thing in mind, thinking, why am I eating now? Because I need to have a healthy body and health so I can serve Hashem. Why am I playing sports now? Okay, I need to have a healthy body so I can serve Hashem better. Everything a person does can be like that. Remember? Even we learned that Rabbah used to tell a joke to his students before he would teach them. Why? To get their attention and to put them to a good mood when they're learning. So says the Alter Rebbe, a joke regularly is klipa. It's just a selfish thing. I want to laugh. But because Rabbah made his joke as a preparation for learning, his joke became elevated to Kedusha. Because the joke helped them learning. Just like your eating helps you learn, your sports help you learn. So everything a person does, using the animal soul, if it's done the right way, it's elevated as part of what the godly soul is doing. Remember that? Okay. Now let's come to the struggle part. Go down to the bottom of the page. Both souls are fully enclosed. They're fully put inside, within the body. They're both inner. And struggle for control of its faculties. The godly soul tries to control the body, and it wants everything the body does to be just about Hashem. And the animal soul wants control of the body. It wants everything the body does to be just about enjoying itself and avoiding pain. Right? And what's the key factor to remember? One has complete control at all times over the following three faculties. What are the three things you always have control over? Look at the bottom of the page. It's not a secret. Thought, speech, and action. What? Machshava Dibur Ma'aseh, the three clothing, thought, speech, and action. Which means, even if what? What did you say? Daled, close. Daled, very, very close. Gimel talks about the Avas Hashem, love and fear. That's really close. It's Perek Dalet. And then in Perek Yud Beis, right? We learned that the average person, the Beinoni, the Alter Rebbe is talking to, is not expected to change how they feel about the world. What are they expected? What's the average person expected to do? To change how he feels? To stop wanting to take care of himself? No. What's he expected to do? Even if he wants to do sin, he's expected to not do it. And that's the key importance here, right? Because we learned the principle, Hamoyach Shalit Alalev, which means the mind controls the heart. So even if I really, really want something, I have the power in my mind to say no. And even in my thoughts, a thought pops into my head. And it's a bad thought. It's the thought of sin. I can't control it. It pops into my head. I can't control that. But what could I do? The moment I realize that this is a sinful thought, what could I do? Push it away and think about Torah, think about something else. Because I can always decide what I do with my mind. And then we learned even more. Because I can do whatever I want with my thoughts. So if I decide to think about how much Hashem loves me, let's just say, because I can control what I think. So if I start to think about how much Hashem loves me, what's going to happen to my feelings? I'm going to start loving Hashem back. So it's true, I can't change my feelings. It's not like, even if I start to love Hashem, when I stop thinking about it, I might go back to just loving myself, right? So maybe I can't change how I feel forever, but at least while I'm davening, while I'm praying, I can feel love for Hashem because I can control how I think. And if I think about things that will make me love Hashem, then maybe I'll start to actually feel it. Remember that? Right. Then we learned another thing, which is, even if I don't actually feel that love for Hashem, but if I come to the conclusion in my mind, you know something? I really should love Hashem. I'm not feeling it, but at least I know I should love Hashem. And then what do I do with my action? I live my life as if I love Hashem. I live my life according to the conclusion that I came to in my mind, which says, I really should love Hashem. I have a hard time feeling it, but I know I should. And then I take that thought, I should love Hashem, and I make that thought be the reason why I serve Hashem in reality, even though I don't actually feel it. Said the Alter Rebbe, that's good enough. Because you did the best you can in trying to create a feeling for Hashem. You can't feel it? Okay, you can't feel it. But at least you did everything you can, and plus, you're acting as if you love Him. Remember that? Yes? Then we said, and this is the last thing we did, chapter 18 through 25, even someone who's not smart enough to think about how amazing Hashem is to the point that he's going to start loving Hashem. He's just not smart enough for that. So how does he feel for Hashem? Says the Alter Rebbe, you already feel for Hashem. Because every single Jew has a part of him that always loves Hashem and is so attached to Hashem that it cannot disconnect itself. And the only challenge is to think and remember that every single sin is like an idol worship, because every single sin is like disconnecting from Hashem. Because every time you sin, what you're saying is, Hashem is in charge of the world, but I do what I want. That's kind of like an idol worship. Because idol worship is saying, Hashem runs the world, but the sun does what it wants. Right? So every time a person does a sin, it's kind of like idol. And if I think of it that way, I would never do a sin. Even if I don't understand Hashem so much, it doesn't matter. The point is, I have deep down in me, Ahava Musateret, the hidden love, the part of me that can never detach from Hashem. And if I remember that, it'll help me from not sinning. And if I remember that, it'll help me be motivated and say, look, if you're willing to give up your life rather than disconnect Hashem, why don't you just get off the couch, do a mitzvah, and you're going to connect to Him. Following? That's basically what we learned in the last 25 chapters. Hope we remember all of this a little bit. Are you familiar with all this? You were with us in the beginning. You weren't with us in the beginning, but you're familiar with all these ideas? Yeah, mostly? Okay, is that clear? Yeah, we remember all of this. Did I miss any parts of the Tanya that you guys remember that we should cover? Or this is pretty much the basics. Okay. Now let's get to chapter 26. As I said before, chapter 26, all the way through 34, begins a new section in Tanya. Besides for chapter 32. Chapter 32 talks about Ahavat Yisrael, love your fellow Jew. We'll do that when we get there. But besides for chapter 32, which talks about Ahavat Yisrael, chapter 26 all the way through 34 until 35, but not including 35, through 34, discusses the importance of joy, how to get joy, how to be happy, and how to get rid of things that cause us distress. And there's a third thing he discusses also. Right? First, he discusses how to get rid of things that distress us. Then he talks about getting rid of arrogance. And then he talks about how to get joy. Those are three things he covers in this section of Tanya from 26 all the way to 334, besides for 32. And the first thing Alter Rebbe talks about is, why should you even be happy? Before he even gets to getting rid of things that cause you worry, why should you even be happy? Anybody? Why should you be happy? Who said? Sorry? To serve Hashem with joy. That's true. And that's the right answer. But I want to back up a little bit I want to do the wrong answer before we get to the right answer. Right? What's the common thinking? Why does a person deserve joy? Or why should a person be happy? Why do I want to be happy? Basically, you're right. Most people, like you said, you don't want to feel depressed. Most people want to be happy for a very simple reason. Because being happy is better than being miserable. Right? So for many people, the reason why they want happiness is not because there's any value in happiness in and of itself. It's not like they need happiness for something. It's just that it's a better way of living. Right? It's a very self-centered happiness. That's the animal soul's desire for happiness. Because it's better, because like I said before, the animal wants pleasure and avoid pain. Okay, so misery is painful, depression is painful, so I want to be happy. It's a very selfish version of happiness. The Alter Rebbe didn't discuss this directly, but there's a problem with that kind of happiness. A person's happiness is based on a selfish drive. You know what the problem is? The problem is, if the happiness comes from, I want to be happy, then, well, let's put it this way. I want to be happy because I want to be happy. So what are the things that are going to make me happy? If my happiness comes from, because I want to be happy rather than be depressed and miserable, so how am I going to get that happiness? How am I going to get it? Sorry? Before we get to Torah and mitzvahs, right? Before we get to that, just as a human being, people are looking for happiness. You're right. Most people are looking for happiness because it's better than depression. It's better than being anxious. So what am I going to do to get that happiness? Oh, so I'm going to basically try to do pleasurable things and try to get happy out of those things. Right? So where's the happiness coming from? Not really from inside of me, but from something outside of me. And if the happiness is coming from something outside of me, then what do I need to do? Constantly be getting more. So it ends up becoming actually quite depressing in some way, because I'm constantly trying to find more things to make me happy. Right? So you know, for example, the famous Mishnah. The Alter Rebbe does not talk about this. I'm just telling you, the Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about this. I'm just giving this to you as a background because I think it's important to understand before we get into the actual chapter 26. The Mishnah says, famous Mishnah, Ezehu Asher, who is wealthy. What's the rest of the Mishnah? Hasamech b'chelkai, one who's happy with what he has. So the Mishnah tells us that someone who's happy with what he has is rich. But how do I get happy with what I have? How do I do that? It doesn't say. It just says, if you're happy with what you have, then you're rich. Okay, that makes sense, because if you're not happy with what you have, right, you always want more. And then you're unhappy, you're miserable, because you're always trying to get more and more and more and more, because you're not happy with what you have, right? So the Mishnah says, if you're happy with what you have, then you're going to be wealthy, because you're happy. But how do I get that happy with what I have? It doesn't say. What do you think the answer is? How do you get to be happy with what you have? So one way is thinking by realizing people have less than me, right? But then what happens? I find someone who has more than me, and now I'm jealous, I want more. Again, because the happiness is coming from something outside of me. What's the proper way? What's the real way to be happy with what you have? Start using what you have, yeah. Or what about this? A guy who doesn't have enough. The Mishnah doesn't apply to him. The Mishnah says, whoever's rich, the one who's happy with what he has. I don't have enough. I don't have, like legitimately, I don't have enough, let's just say, in theory. So this person can't be happy now? Still, because it says, whoever is happy with what they have. So how do you become happy with what you have? When you recognize that what you have is not something you earned, but it's something that what? Hashem gave you. So when you start off, not with I deserve everything, and that's going to make me happy, when I get everything I deserve. If you think of it that way, you always think you deserve more. But when you start thinking, no, I don't deserve anything. Who said I deserve anything? I don't even deserve happiness. Who said I deserve happiness? Hashem granted me these things. Wow, look at this. Lucky me. Hashem granted me all these things in my life. I can't believe how much Hashem gave me. Following? And then even if I don't have enough, whatever I have is from Hashem. So I'm very happy with what I have. Because I know Hashem gave it to me. And if Hashem gave it to me, it's exactly what I need. And then the person's happy with what they have. So which means now, where does the true happiness come from? When you're thinking about yourself and what I want and how I want to feel, then what happens? I end up being miserable. Because I end up wanting more and thinking I need more and thinking I need more. But when I shift and say, hold on a second, think with me. What I want, I deserve. That's animal soul stuff. Let's try to think godly soul mode. Not what I want, what I need, what I deserve. What does Hashem want? What does Hashem need? What does Hashem think I need? So if Hashem thinks I need it, because this is what I have, I'm very happy. And this now what the Torah says, why a person should be happy, and it gets to what you said before. Why should I be happy? Not because it's better than misery, but because that's the best way to serve Hashem. So happiness is not something you want, because if it's all about what I want, then it's never going to be enough. Happiness is about what Hashem needs from me. Hashem needs me to be happy, to serve Him properly. Following? So now happiness is not something I want. Happiness is an obligation. It's an obligation I have to serve Hashem happily. So why am I being happy? Because Hashem wants it. And when I shift the focus away from me, which ends up being a bottomless pit, which is putting more and more stuff inside, and it's never making me happy. When I focus on what Hashem wants, what Hashem needs from me, now my happiness becomes an obligation. Hashem needs me to be happy in order to serve Him properly. Following? With me? Okay. Now, if it's a question of what Hashem needs from me, He wants me to be happy, the question becomes, why is happiness the better way of serving Hashem? Maybe being miserable is a better way of serving Hashem. Why is happiness a better way of serving Hashem? Okay, so the Pasuk says you have to serve Hashem with joy. It's true. But what's the logic? Why is it that serving Hashem with joy is better than serving Hashem when I'm miserable? If it's all about what Hashem needs from me, if I do a better job when I'm miserable, maybe I should be miserable. You're doing this because you want to, right? It's very good. Let's think about that even more. The Alter Rebbe used the example in chapter, 9? Of two kings fighting over a city, right? The godly soul is one king, the animal soul is another king, and my body is the city, and the two kings are fighting over control of the city, right? Remember this? Now that the Rebbe uses a different example, but a similar one. Think of two people wrestling. Two people wrestling. This is what he describes right at the beginning of chapter 26. And one guy is mighty. Mighty on steroids. Guy is super strong. Another guy's a weakling, or let's not a weakling. He's not so strong. So in an even fight, the guy who's stronger always wins. But what happens if one day the strong guy, he's feeling depressed, he's feeling lazy, he's feeling sluggish? Even if he's technically stronger, he's not going to win because he's heavy on his feet. He's not. You have to be light on your feet when you're wrestling. You got to be in the mood. You got to be happy about it, right? You have to be in the zone, like they say, right? And in the zone means your mind is focused, you're into it, you're feeling good, you're feeling confident. Now you're going to win. But even if you're technically stronger and you feel lazy and sluggish and not in the mood, you're going to lose, even if you're technically stronger. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says is happening with the godly soul and the animal soul. The godly soul is stronger. The godly soul has Hashem on its side. right? Which is why when you put a thought of Torah into your mind, the thought of sin goes away. Like the example we gave then in chapter 12 was a candle that pushes away the darkness. It's much stronger. But if the godly soul is feeling lazy, if it's feeling heavy, if it's not light on its feet, if it's not happy about what it's doing, the animal soul is going to win, even if it's technically stronger. So now back to the first question. Why should you be happy? Because that's the best way to serve Hashem. Because if I'm not happy, I'm not going to win. Following? Okay. So now that I know that happiness is something that I'm obligated to create within me, it's my obligation to make myself feel happy, because that's the best way to serve Hashem. That's the best way for success. If I'm happy, I'm not happy about serving Hashem. I'm not happy about what I'm doing in my life, then I'm going to be held back by the animal soul. I'm just going to give in to all the temptations and say, it's not worth it anyway. Might as well just give in, right? That's why I have to be happy. So I can say, no, Hashem waiting for me to do this mitzvah. I got to do it, right? With a whole excitement, and that's the best way to win. So now, before the Alter Rebbe gets to what are the reasons to be happy, how do you create happiness in your mind and in your heart, that he's going to get to in chapter 31, 33, and 34. Before that, in the chapters, end of second half of 26, 27, and 28, the Alter Rebbe discusses four different things that can cause a person to be worried, and how to get rid of those thoughts. 4 different things that can cause a person to be worried. End of chapter 26, he discusses 2 of them that we'll discuss today. And then chapter 27 and 28, he discusses the other 2 things that cause him to be worried, and not, God willing, we'll do tomorrow. So today we're going to cover 2 out of 4 of the things that can cause a person to be worried, and tomorrow the other 2 things, and then we'll move to the next chapters. So what are the first 2 things? The first item is like this. Just things in life that aren't going right. Worry about physical things. The examples out there we give for an adult, someone who has worries of health, worries about his family, worries about providing for his family, parnasa worries, right? But for people younger, teens, I don't know, maybe they're worries about how you're going to do on a test. Maybe they're worries about, whether you have the right clothing for camp, or who knows what. Just worries about things in life. So how do I get rid of those worries? We kind of talked about it before when we said, who is happy? The one who is rich, the one who's happy with what he has. Right? How does a person get happy with what he has? What did we say before? Right? The Mishnah says, he who is rich, one who's happy with what he has. But how do I get happy with what I have? By remembering that who gave it to me? Remembering that Hashem gave it to me. Remembering that it comes from Hashem, that takes away all the worry. So for example, chas v'shalom, God forbid, someone's going through a hard time, an issue of health, let's say even. An issue of health. It's very painful. Someone, God forbid, that's close to them is in pain, health pain. Myself, God forbid. So what does Alter Rebbe tell us to think? Do you know who did this to you? Hashem. And if Hashem did it to you, it's good. It's very painful, but at least you're not worried about it because you know it's good. If you did it to yourself, then you could think, did I do the right thing, not do the right thing? I can get all nervous about it. But when I remember that this thing that I have from Hashem, even if it's very painful right now, but it comes from Hashem. And if it comes from Hashem, it is good. And if I don't be worried about it. You hear that? It's a very, very, very high level. I want to tell you a story to tell you how high this level is. You know, the Gemara says, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say the story, but there's a story like this. The Gemara says that Kashem Shem Mavarach Al Har Toiva Kach Mavarach Al Ra. The same way one has to thank Hashem, make a bracha when something good happens to them. It's a bracha. HaToiva HaMeitiv. Someone who wins the lottery, let's say. They make a bracha HaToiva HaMeitiv, thanking Hashem for the goodness Hashem did. So it says the Gemara that you have to also thank Hashem when something bad happens. When something bad happens, what's the bracha you make? Baruch Dayan Emes. Someone passes away. You say, blessed is the true judge. Blessed is the true judge, or the judge of truth. Dayan Emes, the judge of truth. Meaning you're saying, Hashem did it, he knows what he's doing, and that's why it is. When someone passes away, that's what you say. Baruch Dayan Emes. Sorry? They would make a similar bracha. Yeah. I don't know if they'd actually make the bracha, but something like that. So the Gemara is saying that the same enthusiasm and feeling you have to thank Hashem when something good happens, the same feeling you should have when you make the bracha, thanking Hashem for something that's not good. That's what the Gemara says. So once a story like this. There was a Rosh Hashiva, a teacher in a school, who had a business. He would sell, I think it's called he had a lumber yard. Like he would sell wood. Basically, he owned a big forest. He would cut down the trees and sell the wood. But the way you used to transport wood in the old days, it's very hard to stick a bunch of logs of wood onto a horse and make it pull it, right? Today you have trains and things like that. It's easy to move it. But so in the old day, they had ships. That was easy to ship across ocean. But to get it from the forest to the ocean was very difficult. So you can't put all these logs onto the horses. Your horses will die from carrying it too much, right? And how much can they carry already? So how did you move all your wood? How did you move all this stuff? What? Donkeys. I don't know if they had those in those areas. It's also not strong enough to carry that much. They would put it on the river. They put their logs on the river. And the river would carry the logs all the way to the ocean. And over there, you put it onto the boats and ship it off. So it's a very risky business. It's a very risky business because if the river overflows or whatever, you can lose all your logs very easily. But it's a good business because in places that don't have wood, like, in places that don't have forests, they pay a lot of money to get logs of wood to build whatever they're building, right? So it's a very lucrative business. It means you do very well, but it's a very risky business. So there was a Rosh Hashiva. There was a person who was in charge of a yeshiva, big rabbi, and this was his job. Well, you know the story? Yeah. I think it was in Poland. I don't remember. Yeah, we'll see in a second. Yeah, that's good. That's the story. So he, in the summer, would cut down his trees, put them onto the river, and the rest of the year he would spend in his yeshiva learning. One day, his wife gets a message: all of your husband's wood, it's gone. That's it. It's gone. The river overrun, or someone stole it. It's all the wood's gone, which means the man went from potentially being very wealthy to being broke. Yeah, the rabbi lost all his money. So the rabbi's wife got a message. It's all gone. Now she was afraid to tell her husband because he would freak out. Who knows? It's dangerous for his health. So she went to his students and told the students, okay, this is what happened to your teacher. He lost all of his money because all the wood's gone. You guys got to break the news to him. Figure out a way to do it. Fine. So they go to him and they tell him, Rabbi, we learned in the Gemara and Brachas that a person has to thank Hashem for the good the same way he thanks Hashem for the bad. Can you please explain the Gemara to us? We don't understand. How could you thank Hashem when something bad happens with the same excitement that you're thanking Hashem for something good happens? So he's a Rosh Hashiva, he's a teacher. He explained the Gemara. And they asked him again, but we still don't understand. How could you really do it? How could you really thank Hashem for bad the same way you thank Hashem for good? He explained it again, and then again, and again. And he was getting so involved in explaining that he's excited, and he's all excited and worked up to explain this Gemara, how you thank Hashem even when something bad, because Hashem did it to you, and if Hashem did it to you, it must be good, and going on explaining. And to finally tell him, Rebbe, so if we told you that you lost all of your wood, would you dance? So he said, yes, I would dance. So they told him, okay, Rebbe, you can dance. What do you think happened to him? Fainted. Because he realized he lost all of his wood. Right? So he's explaining the Gemara. So logically speaking, he had all the answers explaining how he would dance when he found out that he lost everything. But when it actually happened to him, what happened? He fainted because it hurts. So what happened in the story is they woke him up and he said, now I can tell you that I don't understand the Gemara either. Right? I don't understand how it's possible. Following? I'm telling you the story to show you that it's a very difficult thing when a person's really suffering to really change his attitude. But this is what the Alter Rebbe says. By constantly reminding ourselves that everything that happens in our life is from Hashem, constantly reminding ourselves, then even when something is very painful in life, at least we're not worried about it. Because we know Hashem did it, and if Hashem did it, it's good. I'll tell you another story which shows this point. In the times of, sorry? I don't know the end of the story. I don't know what happened to the wood at the end of the story. I'll tell you a different story. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say this story either. But actually in the times of the Alter Rebbe, the times of the the rabbi who wrote the Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, in his times, he had colleagues and friends, two brothers, named Reb Pinchas and Reb Shmelka, two brothers. And they were students of the Maggid of Mezrich, just like the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich. And they went to the Maggid of Mezrich and they asked them the question from this Gemara: how is it possible to thank Hashem for something bad the same way you thank Hashem for something that's good? So the Maggid told him, okay, I want you to go to Reb Zusha. Reb Zusha of Anipoli is a famous student of the Maggid, friend of the Alter Rebbe. You know the story? And the Maggid tells Reb Pinchas and Reb Shmelka, the brothers, go to Reb Zusha. He'll tell you, he'll explain this Gemara to you. This Gemara of how you can thank Hashem for bad the same way for good. Now they understood the reason why they're going to Reb Zusha is because Reb Zusha had a hard life. He had a hard life. Not so much parnasa, hard life. So they went to Reb Zusha's house and they asked Reb Zusha, the Maggid sent us and said, we should ask you to explain this Gemara, to explain to us how it's possible to thank Hashem for bad with the same enthusiasm that you do when you thank Hashem for good. Reb Zusha looked at them and said, I don't understand. The Maggid told you to ask me the question. My entire life, nothing bad ever happened to me. Why would the Maggid tell you to ask me? They got their answer. They knew Reb Zusha had a hard life. But the way Reb Zusha looked at his life was, Hashem did it to me. So nothing's bad. How could it be bad? There is no bad. Hashem did it. Following? It's a very high level. But to remember and to constantly remind ourselves that everything that happens to us is because this is what Hashem wants for us, that helps us get rid of the worry of things that are going on in our life. Even if it's very painful, but at least we're not going to have that worry because we know Hashem did it, and if Hashem did it, it's good. Then the Alter Rebbe says one more thing. Not only is everything Hashem do good, but sometimes the things that we feel painful actually come from a deeper love of Hashem than when He gives us good things. And he quotes sources to explain this, but the idea is like this. Hashem, of course, we learned this earlier, is infinite. It's beyond anything we could imagine, right? But because we're small and we're so tiny, we're so finite, right? What we see as good, what we see as enjoyable, could be in essence not so good. Because we don't see everything. We don't have Hashem's vision. But from Hashem's perspective, it's very possible that the things that are not good, that we feel are painful, are actually better for us. It comes from a place where Hashem loves us so much that He's giving us this pain, because that pain's good for us. I don't know, maybe spiritually or physically. I'll give you an example. This is a great example to explain this. A little child has bad teeth. So the parent has to take the kid to the dentist. And the kid's crying, it's going to be drilling and it's going to hurt. It's going to be all painful. You're going to pull out a tooth. It's very painful. And the kid's crying, don't do it. What does the mother do? Holds the kid down and says, sorry, you got to do this. Why? Because from the mother's perspective, the best thing she can do for a kid is to put the kid through that pain. Even if from the kid's perspective, don't put me through the pain, give me another candy. Right? That's how we are like with Hashem. Having what? Having what? So I'm saying I don't know. We don't have Hashem's perspective. We are like the child that thinks that the candy is better, when really the surgery that the dentist is doing is better for us. But Hashem is like the parent who sees that it's better for us to do that pain, to go through that painful thing. The point is that whatever Hashem is giving us is because it's good for us. Because it is good. That's not what I'm saying. Even big tragic events. Let's say. Because it brings tshuva. Actually, there's explanations to that. That's not the point. The point is whatever experience we go through, because Hashem gave it, it must be good. We don't see how it's good. Separate story. But the fact that it is good. And sometimes that good is even higher than the good that we like. In the same way the candy is good for the kid because the kid likes it, but it's not really good. It's much better for the kid to go to the dentist, even though the dentist is painful. And here's the key. Because it's hard for us to experience it. That's why I'm saying it's very hard for us to see it. But we have to start training ourselves to remember that because Hashem did it, it must be good. And that way we'll be less worried about things that we don't like. even if it's still painful, but at least we'll remember, look, Hashem did it. If Hashem did it, it's good. So I shouldn't worry about it. Okay? Oh, so that's another thing. Hashem tells us to mourn the Beis Mikdash, or to mourn, God forbid, a loss in the family. That's something else. That's an obligation we have to mourn. Right? It doesn't mean, because Hashem wants us to go through that process. For whatever reason. But it doesn't mean that we start to worry about what's going to be in our lives. We trust that Hashem did it. Hashem did it, it's good. This is a serious avoid. It takes a lot of work in the mind to get yourself to the point where you don't worry about the bad things that happen. I'm telling you, it's very difficult. That's why I told you these stories. But it doesn't take away from the truth of it, even though it's very difficult. Follow what I'm saying? Okay. Now go back to the example of the dentist. What does the mother tell the child when the kid's in the dentist chair screaming that it's too painful? You know what the mother says? Here, take my finger. When it hurts, squeeze. Right? Parents kind of do that thing. Why are you doing that? The same parent who's holding the child down is also giving the child the comfort. Why? Because when the child remembers my parents are with me in the pain, they feel better already. So remembering that it's Hashem putting you through the pain, and Hashem is there with you, already makes it easier to handle. Following? Exactly. And my parent's the one that's pushing me onto the chair, the dentist. Right? Okay, it's not a perfect example. If your mother was a dentist, it would be a better example. But the point is there, right? It's the parent that's forcing the child to sit on the chair. And it's the same parent forcing the child on the chair that's also giving the child comfort. Same thing with Hashem. Hashem is putting us through this pain, but it is good. And the fact that we remember it's good, and the fact that we remember Hashem is with us as he's giving us this good pain, it already helps us deal with it and feel less worried about it. Clear? Okay, so that's item number one that the Alter discusses in chapter 26 that cause us, we're all still in one chapter. I added a lot of stories, like the stories aren't in there. And the thing we talked about before about, sorry? I read them other places. And the beginning part where we talked about how happiness that comes from what I want is not a good happiness. The Alter doesn't write that directly, but it's kind of what I understand from what he wrote. But this is all still one chapter. Okay, so I said today we were going to cover two things that can cause worry and how the Alter deals with that, but it's getting late, so we'll stop here. So we finished almost all of 26. There's still a little bit left of 26. That we'll do tomorrow. And then we'll get into 27 and 28, B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow. And those are going to be very, very uplifting chapters. So this chapter was very uplifting because it told us the obligation to be happy, how important it is to be happy. So that way, when you're happy, you can much more fight your nefesh habahamit because you're happy, you're excited to do, right? Like the wrestler who has to be happy and light on his feet to fight. And we learned that even when things are painful, we must remember that this comes from Hashem, and if it comes from Hashem, it's good. We don't see the good, we don't know how it's good, different story. But the fact is, if it came from Hashem, it must be good. Remembering that helps us get through difficult times. Sorry? Yes, everything comes from Hashem. So whatever we're experiencing comes from Hashem. And for whatever reason, he deems that this is the right thing for us to go through now. Remembering that helps us not worry as much about it and helps us deal with it. Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to Mitzrayim, there was a process we had to go through in order to get to Torah. Right, that's an example. That pain, the pain we went through in Egypt, is what made us into a people afterwards that we were able to get the Torah. Right? So now, 3,000 years later, we can understand why that happened. At the time, it was very painful. Right? That's an example. Okay, we can't understand why Hashem does things the way he does. Right? Because we're not Hashem. But we just have to accept the way it is. In other words, I'm going to put it this way. Hashem could have done anything. So if Hashem did it any way, you would ask, why didn't you do it the other way? Right? So we can never really ask why Hashem didn't do it the other way, because there's a billion possibilities. The only thing we can do is look at what Hashem did do and say, okay, this is how it works. Right? It's almost like when you're looking at science. Science can't ask, why is there gravity? There is gravity. Now let's understand how it works and what's the point of it and how to use it to our benefit. Right? But why? Why? It's just the way it is. Right? So Hashem just made the world this way. Why he did it this way, I don't know, you have to ask him. But once the world is in a certain way, we have to look at that and see what it means for us and how to live the best we can. Yeah, but why did you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you take away your brother's toy and give him a new one? Just to torture him. So you weren't doing it for his benefit. It wasn't like there was a purpose. From Hashem's perspective, there's a purpose. He doesn't do things just to torture us for no reason. Right? So whatever he's doing has a purpose and a good. It's a question of if we concede or not. I know, but by accident doesn't count. Hashem doesn't do things by accident. It's much more like the mother taking the kid to the dentist. I know, okay, it's not a perfect example, but you get the point, I think. Right? Okay, so we're going to stop over here, and God willing, we'll continue tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.